time to address a story I've been following heavily for the last, last couple of weeks actually, but it came to crescendo the last couple of days. You guys know I love sports media, following for sports media, or media in general, not sports media, but media in general. Stephen A. Smith and Jason Whitlock, two black prominent sports journalists. Although I'll say one is still on top of his game, one is still arguably the most popular, biggest face of the medium. Other one has been relatively obscure into a more fractured and situation where he's catering to a certain audience, and that's it. In Whitlock. So Jason Whitlock has been, from watching some of his material, because look, here's the thing: I don't do left, right, conservative, liberal. I don't do echo chambers. I try to listen to everything, or most things, from a diverse point of view, to hear perspective. Even if I don't agree with what you're saying, I want to hear perspective. So Jason Whitlock's been needling Stephen A. Smith for a long time, and a lot recently too. Talking about his book, talking about he's there's a couple things, there's a lot of things. He's very critical of ESPN in general. That's like the conservative line. And he went on a rant, I think Monday, where it was, and he said he got Stephen A's new book, Straight Shooter and First Takes. Which, by the way, I love that book. I actually got the early book last year. I enjoyed it. I actually reviewed it on this show last year, so check it out on an old episode from last year. And Whitlock was critical of the book, and basically saying in many words that Stephen A. was lying in this book, fabricating what he was saying in this book, mainly about his career playing college basketball. And I many things that can piss off Stephen A. Smith. Apparently, this situation though is what got him over the top. I'm going to play for you guys. This is gonna be a little bit long here, so bear with me here. But this is gonna be a 3.5-minute clip of Stephen A. on his podcast yesterday, who he said got permission, not even permission, told ESPN out of respect, told his pastor out of respect, that he was going to go off on Jason Whitlock on his podcast. And yeah, he went off yesterday on Mr. Whitlock. Here is his 3.5-minute rant yesterday on his podcast, as I get it up right here.
And please do not allow this to be a reflection on my character, because this is not how I act every day. But I mean it from my soul when I say this is the worst human being I've ever known. I don't know of another human being worse than Jason Whitlock. He is a piece of shit. He's the dude that's going to have a funeral and ain't going to be no pallbearers. Might be 2 people to show up. He's that dude. He is the absolute worst. And he lies. And he incriminates. And he tries to set people up to fail, to big up himself, because he can't do it on his own. He had a television show. He failed. He's had opportunities one time after another. He doesn't measure up. And now he's coming after big dog. And let me tell you something right now. I am the big dog. I ain't the only one. There's plenty. Skip Bayless, apologies to him too for bringing up Jason Whitlock's name in the same sentence as him. But we all know what time it is. Everyone knows. All the executives at all the networks, they know what a piece of shit he is. And they begged me not to do this. But even my pastor, A.R. Bernard, said, I'm not happy about it. But every now and then we got to do what we got to do. I promise you, and last to my sister Carmen, I won't do this again. I promise you. I know you cringing. You didn't want me to do this. I'm sorry, sis. It was necessary. He's a sorry, fat piece of shit. A no of the worst order. That's who he is. And I want to make sure everybody knows that. And I said to Isaiah Thomas, and I said to Dan Levitard, if you care anything about our friendship, don't ever call me about him again. I'm a very forgiving person. Not with him. I don't care what beef I had. I don't care how many of you out there that hate me, whatever former athletes, all this stuff. Man, please, I'm sorry. Because I certainly don't hate y'all. We might have our differences from time to time, but ain't never that. This is the exception. I hate this bastard. Not even far more than a little bit. He is the worst human being any of you will ever meet. You get within a mile of his presence. Wrap your arms around yourself to protect your soul. He is Cain. He is a devil.
Wow.
The worst. That's all I have to say. Y'all have a nice day. I'm going to go about my business. I will not speak about this piece of shit again. Peace and love.
First of all, the funny part of the whole thing of that is he says peace and love after calling him a rat bastard and calling him Cain and all this bullshit. All right, let's unpack things here. Because I got into it on social media with a lot of folks, some defending Whitlock, some not, and all that. This is not new news about Whitlock. Let me tell you why. Personal level. I have personal friends in media that have worked on the Whitlock in the past and have said similar sentiments about the guy. You look at the guy, Whitlock, and by the way, I kind of feel bad for him too in some sense because like this is a massive takedown. And by the way, it wasn't 3.5 minutes of a takedown. The actual Whitlock takedown took 45 minutes of an hour podcast. So I encourage you guys to go check out the Stadium 6 show from yesterday on there. He went in for 45 fucking minutes on Whitlock. Limb for limb. Broke down the article back in 2015 that Greg Howard from Deadspin wrote about, you know, the inner workings of him at ESPN when he was trying to put together Undefeated and all that. And again, what Stephen A. said, I have also heard about Whitlock from personal friends of mine that used to work with him or for him or under him for years. Multiple people have said this to me. At some point, you're the problem. You know it's bad when Clay Travis, okay, someone with a guy that they both get along, both agree on the same political spectrum, same ideology, or similar anyway. And when they try to join up and do Outkick the coverage back in 2020, I actually remember writing about that on my blog, saying this is an interesting marriage. And not even, 3, 4, 5 months later, that thing broke up. That thing ended in flames. That partnership ended in flames. When you can't even get along with Clay Travis and make things work, on top of the history you have with ESPN, with Fox Sports, the Kansas City Journal, countless other places you've written for and worked for, and put a record. You watched the podcast that Stephen A. did. He put names to paper for the record, and then said names that he mentioned all confirmed what you said. You know what's bad when Clay Travis don't work with you. You know what's bad when Chris Broussard, who's probably the most religious person in sports media, that did appearances with him on other on Speak for Yourself and Fox Sports back in the day, don't want to work with you anymore. You know, it's funny because these things I've been hearing for years. We're talking decades now. So when people get at me like, "Oh, we talking about? You know, James Whitlock just told the truth. Conservatives telling the truth." No. You're mad because you agree with his ideology. Therefore, Whitlock can't be wrong because he agrees with everything you say. Well, you don't even understand the history of Jason Whitlock. This has nothing to do with anything that happened in the last 2 or 3 years. We're talking 20, 25 years here of history. So stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Jason Whitlock, for a long time, was a contrarian. Still is today, but worse. You know, if you talk Jason Whitlock, the sky is blue, he's going to tell you something different just because. It's what he does. His writing, and look, he's actually a really good writer, but the context is writing, the content is writing. It's questionable because he almost criticizes for the sake of criticizing, and he still does it today. This dude has burned every single fucking bridge known to man. I have personal friends who, again, who worked under him. I'm not putting names on that because that's their business. I ain't gonna do that. Personal friends that appear on this very podcast have told me this. This is not surprising. None of this is surprising. And the people who are defending him have no clue because they like him because he's the black guy that's on the conservative side. This is not about conservatism and liberalism. This is not about left and right politics. This situation with Stephen A. and Jason Whitlock and Whitlock's behavior for years goes beyond politics. It's right and wrong. You hear Dan Le Batard on his radio show today, on his podcast today, talk about how like they were good friends and now they're not. And Whitlock burned that bridge. Again, I've been following this stuff for decades. This is not something where it's all of a sudden because now it's so cool to be in politics and the media and all that now all of a sudden, yeah. No, I've been following Whitlock for years. He's always been polarizing, but it was never like this. And now you hear all the internal things. Jamel Hill confirming things that Stephen A. Smith said. You know, massive people. Mike Hill, formerly ESPN, I think still Fox Sports, confirming same things also too. These are really good people too. Also, I mean, look, you may agree to some of the politics there, but these are people who have always been authentic and to the point. At some point, you're the problem. The Blaze is look again. You went ESPN twice. You went to Fox Sports twice. You went to different places you've written for. All burned bridges. You even try to go to outget the coverage with Clay Travis on a platform that you actually share ideology with, and that couldn't work. This now, granted, my one gripe with Stephen Smith here I had was this, because for weeks leading up to this, he kept saying that fat bastard. You know, that fat bastard. He would never refer to Whitlock by name. He'd just say that fat bastard. Of course, I knew who it was because I mean I followed those things, and Whitlock is obviously fits the bill. But he never even mentions my name, so he didn't give Whitlock any clout. The only thing I will say that Stephen A. Smith probably shouldn't have did wrong here. I think he did wrong because he wanted to address it, but this feud, which has now gone viral on massive other media platforms and all that, you know, is giving Jason Whitlock relevance again. Jason Whitlock has not been relevant for a while. I mean, he was on TV probably at Fox Sports last night, 2018, 2019. But even then, he was on a show that was not doing well ratings wise. He hasn't been on ESPN in almost 10 years. Okay. And even then, he was barely relevant on ESPN. He hasn't been relevant in a big way in a long time. Stephen A. Smith, being the biggest name in the business right now, just gave him free clout by mentioning his name. You know, he says he won't address it again. Okay, cool. But, you know, he gave him free clout. He gave him free publicity in a sense. That's the only bad thing that came out of this, honestly, for Stephen A. Smith. You know, and you know, in some ways, I do feel bad for Whitlock. I do listen to this content mainly to hear what he has to say. So I want, because again, I'm working in a space where I'm doing media myself. So I'm going to speak on things that he's speaking on, depending on what he's saying. You got to keep air out, because I with Whitlock, I don't agree with pretty much everything he says, but you have to know what's going on. You know, this is a guy with no family, no kids, no wife, this whole nine. And I'm not here trying to take him down, for the record, because I don't care. I'm not friends with the guy and all that. I don't care. But what we saw Stephen A. do last night on his podcast is just confirmation of things I have heard for years. For years. That dude has burned every fucking bridge imaginable. And the Blaze, which happens to be a conservative outlet, okay, gave him a platform. He's doing okay with it, but it's segued toward a certain audience. It's his choice. Just saying. But very fascinating feud. I find it more interesting than the Jimmy Kimmel Pat McAfee feud, honestly, or the Aaron Rodgers Jimmy Kimmel feud. Honestly, this one's more interesting. Two black guys. Look, Whitlock, for all the stuff we can't stand about the guy, he's still a prominent sports writer of our time. He's one of the biggest names we've had in the last decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, what to call it. He's made an impact, which makes this sadder for him. And again, all people defending Whitlock have no clue. Because when I talk to them about the history of the stuff, they have no clue. It has nothing to do with politics and wokeness and stuff. It has nothing to do with that at all. This is about someone's behavior upon years, upon years, upon years, upon years, and every single person around is confirming that. Every single one. Even people you agree with on the political side of the aisle. Just say. Think about that. Think about that.